lessons. Both of our books are available at store.ancientfaith.com, and they would make a wonderful Christmas gift to share the light of Christ on Christmas morning. After all, as I taught our Sunday school class this past Sunday, Christmas is really about sharing Christ's light, and we can do that by sharing all the wonderful resources at Ancient Faith. So go ahead and check out those books. And, tonight we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts, to both of our hearts in the ministry that we work in. And one of the greatest yearnings I think we all have in relationship is to feel heard, to know that the people we are communicating with are truly listening and acknowledging us on a deeper level. And it's really this kind of listening that helps us feel not only heard, but deeply known and understood. But one of the greatest struggles that we often see in relationships is people not feeling heard, not feeling understood, and really not feeling emotionally connected to people who are right there in their life, to some of the most important people in their lives. And so tonight we're going to talk about how we practice active listening and some of the tools that we can put into practice today to better make the people in our own lives feel truly heard. And here to speak with us tonight is no stranger to Ancient Faith. It's psychologist Dr. Al Rossi. He is a known podcaster and just known all throughout the Orthodox world. And he has a podcast right here on Ancient Faith. He's a clinical psychologist at St. Vladimir's Seminary, and he's been a member of the faculty counselor for 30 years. And his podcast on Ancient Faith Radio is called Becoming a Healing Presence. He also wrote 2 books that are also published right here on Ancient Faith, entitled All Is Well and Becoming a Healing Presence. So, Dr. Rossi, welcome to the show.
I would say at this present moment of my life, thank the both of you, Brother Nicholas and Dr. Roxanne, for being friends of mine and having me on this show. I know this show, this podcast video, is very, very well received, very important, very thoughtful, very well constructed. So for me, it's a delight to be here. So I'll just jump into the water.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Sure. The topic for tonight is active listening is love delivered. I would, for starters, I'm not very good at it. Now, there are times I saw Seminary for an hour late afternoon today, and I did active listening consciously as best I could. But to say that, the reason is in the title, active listening is love delivered. God is love. And I know that I don't deliver God very well. Therefore, I need to be on a program like this. I need to think about it. I need to teach it. I need to do these things. I would like to start this as I start every parish retreat. I was in Minneapolis a couple weeks ago giving 2 talks to prison ministry group. I always start the same way, namely with a song from my wife. This is a short song, 30 seconds. So I say that because she's dead, 32 years in heaven, but not apart. So she is part of this screen, this podcast. I talk to her 12 times every day and have. So let's have her sing a song for us.
just beautiful every time we hear it.
Heavenly. And that music does soften our hearts. Let some more intuition come into our consciousness. So, yeah.
I love how you, Dr. Rossi, share that. Obviously we've had you on for multiple times on our show, and obviously I love your wife's voice. It's extraordinary and beautiful, and even the words even greater. I mean, seek the Lord with all of our hearts, and with all of His righteousness. And I think the challenge that, I think that the gift that you're really giving us from the very beginning is just reminding us that when we're seeking Him, we start to look more and more like Him and act more and more like Him. So I would love to kind of just begin to show, really asking you, how would you describe, because I think a lot of us think that we actively listen, but really, how would you describe active listening?
Brother Nicholas, that's really the basic question of this hour. What the heck? What are we talking about?
Right.
And for me, as I teach it, and as I have a little video of the show, maybe the audio, the active listening is different from listening. And it's certainly different from normal conversation. We need regular listening. We need conversation. But when we decide to actively listen, that's when we're delivering God. And you know what? The person knows it. That's it. What is it? I'll begin by saying what it's not. Active listening is not asking a question. And for me, the reason for that is very clear. If I ask a question, that act instantly makes a power differential. That's because I am asking you, and I put you on the spot. Now, you can choose to ignore it, but you have to choose. You can choose to say something, then you have to choose what to say. But I have taken the initiative and the power. And for me, having raised, 2 children who are now adults, it was very clear that questions for adolescents are a problem because they smell the differential of power. For example, my Beth, who's a sweetheart, when she was in high school, my wife was still alive, sit at the table, 6 o'clock, meatloaf, mashed potatoes, green beans. I would say to my wife, honey, how was your day? Well, what'd you do today? Blah, 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 blah. Nice little conversation. Timothy, my son, who was 5 years younger than Beth, Timothy, let me ask, please, what was your day like? What'd you do today? And he really wanted to talk. Well, blah, 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 blah. Beth, sweetheart, how was your day? Would you like to tell us a bit about what you did today? What did you do? Work and play. Okay. Although me didn't get the basic message, namely, I don't want to be asked that.
Right.
Next night, same thing. My wife, my Timothy, that's what you do today, with a little edge. Work and play. Third night, wife, Timothy, that's what you do today, honey. W and P. You didn't use the words. Meaning, don't ask me these dumb questions because I smell what's happening. So I could, but suffice it to say, active listening is not asking questions. In no sense is it judgmental at all. There are a lot of ways to be softly judgmental or not so softly. Active listening is a declarative sentence, not total silence. So if you say something, I active listen by saying something to let you know I heard what you said. So now that we've kind of get a little sense of that, there are various levels. One way to do that is to say back what was said. That's okay, and it works. And if we have time, I'll listen to my little best doing a little bit for me. But the better active listening is a declarative sentence showing the other person. I heard what you said. You used words, and I use words different from what you said, but touch the meanings. For example, I say to one of my colleagues, today I had faculty council meeting for 2 hours, end of year. And afterwards, walk with one of my colleagues, and if I say, I'll make up a name, John, how you doing? And John says, my life feels like a roller coaster. I could say, so your life feels like a roller coaster, which, la, la, la. But I could say, your life sounds like it has lots of ups and downs. Mm-hmm. That's a roller coaster. Or your life goes really fast and then really slow. That's a roller coaster. So I would say to him, a declarative sentence, it's not a question or judgmental, words that indicate I heard the meaning of what you said. Mm. Now, obviously, it's a skill. It takes a certain kind of awareness, certain kind of choice when to do it or when to not do it. But in short, that's active listening, which means nothing about me, nothing about my experience or my ego or anything that's parallel to what you're saying. No. I listen to you, and when this occurs, and it's sincere, and there's eye contact, the other person's ego just melts. It's not always, but much of the time it's very, very bonding.
So if we were to sort of apply that definition of active listening to 16-year-old Beth in high school when she said W and P, what might have that response looked like? And this is probably for every parent who has a kid who says, fine, nothing. What would the active listening response look like in that moment from you as you hear her?
Dr. Roxanne, that's a really good question. And it's not, I had nothing. I didn't even say, I understand that, which would have been a question and made it worse. Now I can look at that and say, sweetheart, how was your day? WC. Sounds like you really don't want me to ask those questions. Boom. That would have been, now, again, there are a half dozen similar things I could have said, but I think that would have nailed it because that's what was going on. And if I were listening to her and told her I'm listening to you with that kind of sentence, she'd have softened. I mean, she's a talker. I call her my champagne bubble. But what she didn't want, me doing that at the table. Simple as that.
Yeah, I love that. The hitting the nail on the head with the true experience of the person in that moment is so beautiful because it is what, when you said softened, it softens and says, oh, well, you actually get me. And so maybe I'll talk to you.
Who's listening is very non-judgmental. Again, if we have time at the end, I'll play 5 minutes, me doing an interview of her. However, the interview I did with her at 7 years old went 14 minutes. I cut it down to 5. So share with us. Right now, I think it would be good if I share with you two and the viewers a video I have of a seminarian from Africa, Uganda, Gulu. He's in his 3rd year. This guy married, 3 children, left his family for 3 years to come study in a foreign culture. He's now a deacon, going to become a priest and go back to Uganda and serve the people there, as his predecessor did, Father Simon Menya, whom you might have heard of. Left his family of 3 children, stayed 3 years, Now, Father Simon Menya went back in Uganda's civil war, north-south, north-lost. That's where he is. He went back to a city that was made up of widows, orphans, alcoholic men, and prostitutes. That's the whole town. Now he's going back to take St. Vladimir's education and build a church, new church. For 4 years, he met with those people under the mango tree at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning and listened to their narratives. Now, he did talk some, and his basic message was, there's a lot of disease around here, a lot of unhappiness, and life could be better for you. And after 4 years, he decided to bite the bullet, asked them who would like to be baptized. And one day he baptized 125 in the river. And from then to this day, he's done amazing work, but they actually built a church, which is a beautiful church, with, if I remember, I'll send it to your email address, that's the church. They had to build the bricks out of straw and mud to build the church. And the next year, baptized 45 more. Now he has a little pig farm. He has an actual building of a clinic with a full-time nurse and so on. So Deacon Richard, whom we'll see right now, is a student and is doing the same thing. Deacon, going to be a priest. But on active listening, I did a little 4-minute interview with him. So let's now, if we can, see Deacon Ocala.
So I am about to interview my friend, Deacon Richard Ocala, who heard me speak at orientation about active listening. He went home, and to his surprise, his wife reacted. So I'd like you, the listeners, to hear what he has to say. So, Deacon Richard, what happened when you went home?
Thank you so much, Dr. Rossi. Something that happened to me at home is very amazing. When I came for my first year at the seminary, I had an active listening session with Dr. Rossi for all the first year seminarians. And I listened to him. I was so amazed how God blessed us with him. I went home and I was sharing what I learned with my wife at home. Then she said, "Oh, I can hear what you're saying." And then she started talking and giving me how home was. Then I could not respond the way I used to do so. So then she continued talking, and then later she realized that I was actively listening to her. Then she said, "Oh, there's a big change in your life, a big difference." I still kept quiet, and she said, "Now I realize that seminary is a good place. There's a big change in your life. What happened?" And then I said, "Well, thank God. That is how God wants us to do, and through good people." And then finally, she concluded and said that seminary seems to be a very good place for most husbands. She's blessed to have her husband come to study at the seminary. Now the husband comes home very, very attentive, very loving, and listening to her more and more, avoiding any unnecessary arguments we used to do before. And now she said, "Wonderful, and thank you to God, and glory be to God."
Thank you for that, Deacon Richard. Deacon Richard is from Uganda, has been at seminary now 3 years, has a wife and 3 children that he left back home to come here and study and go back and serve the Africans in Uganda as a priest. Thank you.
Frankly, I love that interview and I love that style. That is to say, active listening isn't only for those of us in helping professions. It isn't only for adults who It really cuts through all lines and can be used in domestic situations successfully. He said, he called me last night from the airport, flying back to Uganda for the Christmas break, and he's a happy camper. And he's changed in his going back home life. So, yeah.
Dr. Rossi, I just wanted, if you don't mind, I just would like to follow up with that. I remember attending a seminar with Dr. John Gottman, and he had done some research on how often or how much really we're listening in a relationship, and he found that I think only 70% of a conversation is actually heard. And I think that's correct. Is that correct? Was that around the percentage, Roxanne? Why do you think that we struggle so much to listen? Is it purely pride that we want to make sure that we get our point across, or that we're already? I mean, kind of just why do we struggle with that so much?
Well, Nicholas, that's a really, really good question. I love John Gottman of all the things he's written about marriage and making marriage work. And your question, why do we have such difficulties? Because I ask myself that question a lot as well, especially when I'm not listened to. My own answer to myself is we don't listen very well in the culture or in orthodoxy because we're children of Adam and Eve. And as children of Adam and Eve, we are disposed toward darkness. Darkness for me means ego-centered, narcissistic. I am thinking my thoughts while you're talking, and I'm not hearing much of what you're saying. Why? Because I'm thinking my own thoughts. I just have that for me as a function of being on this planet now and my heritage. But it's also true. Yes, I'm a child of Adam and Eve. And yes, I'm a child of God and an inheritor of the kingdom and loved and have the capacity to be able to let God's power, grace, voice more through me. And that's what this is all about. Because when we are actively listening, to the extent that we can, we have to set our own thoughts aside. And I know there's part of me, often when I'm doing this, chanting in my ear, I want to think what I want to think, thank you, and don't bother me. But in that sense, active listening is a bother to my flow of my own, mostly irrelevant thoughts. They come and they go and can't remember what I was thinking about. So that's my short answer. So I expect for everybody on the planet, because we're all children of Adam and Eve. I
was just thinking that, I'm sure that our listeners then listening to our show may want to call in and if they have a question or a comment for Dr. Rossi. So we'd love to hear from you. Just as a reminder, friends, you can call us at 1-855-237-2346, 1-855-237-2346, or feel free to leave a comment on Ancient Faith's YouTube page or the Louhs Facebook page. Our producer, Matushka Trudy, will link it to that during the show. I mean, because I know, even in my own work as a priest and my work in some ways is in counseling, I can't tell you how often I hear people, and I know this has even happened in our own relationship, where we'll say, no, you didn't hear me correctly. You're not listening to me. That kind of, and you hear that a lot in relationships. And oftentimes it's these kind of little ants at a picnic, these little difficulties that happen, these little small things that kind of mess up a relationship. And so for me, I think it's so important that we're having this show because I think it's just an area that we see so many people when they're coming to counseling are struggling with.
Yes. And based on your
go ahead.
Yes, please.
Oh, no, go ahead, Dr. Rossi.
That Anya Hopko, Father Tom Hopko's wife, both are dead, was asked the question, how do you manage having, so many children and having your husband away so much of the time? And her answer was, the problem isn't that he's away much of the time. The problem is when he's home, he's not really home. That he's not listening. He's not here. He's in his own work head doing other stuff. Now, I knew Father Tom very well. I was his therapist for a year. He was my spiritual father. conflict of interest, I don't know. But I know that's something he wanted to work on and love better, and he did. But it's work. It's spiritual warfare to actually love.
Absolutely.
And it's love delivered. I am here for you. And I would also say active listening is, for me and most, done consciously. I know I'm going to do this now. And it can be done for one sentence, or it can be done for 14 minutes, as I did with my daughter, depending on what I choose to do. Now, my interview with my daughter, I taught full-time, tenured at Pace University, 24 years, and taught this stuff. And during one class on counseling, I had this thunderclap in my head. They're not getting it. They're just not understanding what it's about. What can I do to help them? So I went home and decided to demonstrate active listening with my daughter, Beth. So one evening after dinner and stuff, 9 o'clock at night, my wife, and we didn't have Timothy yet, and Beth are in the kitchen, and I had a little tape recorder. My wife is doing dishes, and I said, honey, can I interview Beth for my class at Pace? Al, sure, you do what you like. She continues dishes. So I said to Beth, and Beth is in her nightie, pink, zipper from her ankle up to her neck. And we're just chatting. I said, honey, can I interview on the tape recorder and share with my students? And she said, yes. So I interviewed her. So it was simply a plain old evening in a plain old house with a father talking to his daughter. So I simply actively listened to her for 14 minutes. And it turned out to be the best 14 minutes of our relationship. I don't think I've ever done that like that since. But I do still play that back for her, and we have a lot of fun talking about it because it is a sweet little voice. And what I have, so I cut it from 14 minutes down to 5. And this might be a good time to listen to that.
Yeah.
So, might we listen to now the Beth and me speaking?
What should we talk about now?
Well, I was just wondering, like, what your brother's like.
Oh, he's a nice baby. He's cute. But, like, if he was about 2.5 and we had a 3-month-old baby, probably just to get more attention from his mother, he would probably, like, bite the baby's finger or something.
He'd do almost anything to get attention. I mean, this guy he would even hurt you just to get attention, huh?
Yeah. That's what I think. Is that what you think, Dad?
Well, yeah, that's pretty much what I think, too. I guess I'd also be interested in...
Talking about Pace?
Sure.
Well, like, I like to come and teach, you know? Yeah, it's fun because, like, normally I don't only teach the people teach me stuff.
So it really goes both ways.
Yeah, and, like, it's nice because they have animals there, you know.
And all sorts of, well, interesting things.
Yeah, like, they
do.
have, like, maybe sometimes arts and crafts, right? And, like, things to do. They have pony rides, you know.
And lots of fun things that
Yeah.
you can do.
They have sometimes carnivals.
So there's lots
And you can have picnics there.
There'll be lots of activity
Mhm.
and a lot of things to do.
Yeah.
A lot going on.
Like they even have that lunchroom, you know.
Oh, where you can get stuff to eat
Right.
if it's lunchtime, or probably other times.
Yeah.
So,
Like breakfast.
yeah. And you could just go and get whatever you wanted to eat and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
Like
feel
you
good.
can just come anytime, can't you?
Well, sure, if you wanted.
Like you could get a chocolate milk or something if you wanted to. Or you could come over and get an orange, you know.
Just whatever.
Except it's not free.
Well, you have to pay.
Yeah. But like at my school, lunch is only $1.
So for $1 you get a whole lunch.
Yeah. And
Whatever.
then like usually if I get ice cream that's a pop, it's usually only a quarter. But if I get ice cream like a sandwich, that's 35 cents, you know.
So-
And the cookies are, I think, a dime. And if you give the lady a nickel, then she'll give you a pretzel, and if you give her 2 nickels, how many nickels you give her, then that's how many pretzels you give her.
Oh, so it really depends how many nickels you get, how much
Yeah.
you get to eat.
Yeah.
If you get a lot of nickels, you get
Yeah.
a lot of pretzels.
Yeah. Like if you wanted it, but like what you can't do is you can't like say, oh, I've got to buy a pretzel for my friend. You're not allowed to do that.
You just buy for yourself.
Right. If the other person wants to buy dessert, then that's the person who should buy dessert.
For themselves,
Yeah.
not for somebody else.
Right.
Lunchroom's a pretty exciting place.
Yeah. Because my friend Danny, he had on a shirt. It says, "I hate school, but I love lunch."
So that makes the lunchroom pretty special.
Yeah, like
Because the sign
he
said
gets-
the rest of the school he hates.
Yeah. Because anyway, because it's probably because of the playground. You know, he gets recess.
Mhm.
So
he doesn't hate everything about school because he likes recess and
well,
lunch.
that's about all.
Yeah, not much else. So Danny has his own attitude about school.
Mhm. But it had like I with blue, hate, and then in Brooks school, and then but I love was in a heart, and lunch was in a one of those trays.
Oh, and a tray.
Mhm.
So the jersey had on it letters and drawings, a heart
Right.
and a heart for love,
Mhm.
and a tray for
Yeah.
eating. I suppose lunch is kind of a fun thing for everybody.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. But like our lunch teacher is mean. Just because you talk when the whistle is blown, she doesn't let you have dessert.
Oh, so if you talk when they don't want you to talk, then you don't get the stuff you want to get.
Right. So it's not always fun.
No, you really got to do what they want you to do.
Mm.
Or you
No
pay
dessert.
no dessert. You pay the consequences.
You really followed her into her world completely.
Well, there's another 2 minutes that said we're not hearing. So we talked like that. She said, Sarah thought the baby came out your mouth. Well, I'm her dad, 7-year-old, was on the floor. I said, well, that's a strange thing to think. He said, yeah, baby's too big to come out your mouth. That's what she wanted to talk about with her dad. Said, even now, even I know how the baby comes out. I wanted to ask the question, what is it you know, honey? And she said, oh, Dad, I have to go to bed. I'm getting tired. She only wanted to talk about what she talked about to the extent that she did, but you could see there was nothing of my interpretation or...
Right.
Yeah, you just followed her into her world completely.
Right.
And she kept talking as you continued to do that. She continued to open. I feel as though when people close is when we stop following and we redirect or we shift or we try to persuade or convince or if we don't like the answer that we hear, we want to insert a lesson or we want to shift that or change that in some way, and people, shut down. And I think, some of the obstacles, I think, that I see people running into is, as you're talking, I don't like what you're saying. I disagree with what you're saying. I want to fix what you're saying. And then, yeah. So how do people control that part of them? I want to lead you when you're talking. I want to move you in a certain direction.
Dr. Roxanne, it's a really, really great question. And I would say to me and the two of you, and to those who are viewing and listening, I have within me, as a child of Adam and Eve, and each of you two have within you a small or large control freak. I want to control what I want to control when I want to control it. Thank you. That might mean I want to change your thoughts and your behaviors, and it simply doesn't work. We can tell people what we think they should do. The person says, I have this cough, and the doctor said my lungs aren't what they used to be, and I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day. It doesn't do any good to tell the person will stop smoking. Patronizing. It doesn't get results. So my own attitude is people only changed for the better by being loved into the change. That's the only way it works. Now, I might get some short-term change, but it's not lasting.
Yeah.
A recovering alcoholic who goes, and I'm sober for more than 30 years, but I still go to 2 meetings a week because I know I am powerless over alcohol. I know that. However, the psyche and body work, that's me. But that's a basic message that I say and get back in my meetings and in my sponsees and when I talk to my sponsor and so on. So, and that's antithetical to active listening. Being a control freak is simply me showing my muscle onto the world, and it might make me feel better, but it doesn't do what I'd like it to do. Doesn't get the results I'd like it to get. That is to say, I cannot change you, and I certainly could not change my wife of 19 years, and I'm delighted that I was able to stop trying to change her because she's beautiful the way she is, and that's the way I think she could improve a little bit. So yeah.
True. And it seems like active listening, in my mind, as a visual, I almost see it making a lot of room for someone else, to sort of exist. As we start directing and controlling and fixing, we sort of shrink and we get bigger, right? And in relationship, we don't really see, the other person, and then we sort of complain or feel as though there's a disconnect, right? But so much of this, someone really gets bigger. You're listening to your daughter. She just kept, taking you more into this world that she was in, and in such detail. But this is the same girl who, when you said, how was your day? It was W and P, and she didn't tell you all those details about school, and the ice cream in the cafeteria and pace and whatever, seems to me there was quite a bit of information there that she, was keeping to herself.
Right. Dr. Rossi, if you don't mind, can I just follow up to what Roxanne was just sharing? I'm just thinking of, a couple listening to our show this evening and thinking to themselves, okay, we'll just role play that the husband is saying, okay, I'll active listen, but at what point can I share what I need to be, what's on my heart? And when do I do that? So I'll honor the active listening part, but at what point can I share what I need and have her active listen with me? I mean, what would you kind of guide someone with that?
Again, a great question. And every couple is different. The best I can do with the question is to say, yes, please try to active listen. I might decide to active listen one sentence. Then I want to talk about me, please. That's fine. Or I can say I'm going to active listen for 3 minutes. then I want to share what I'm thinking, and that's fine. So there's a discernment about active listening, how much I want to listen. And sure, I want to share. And I mean, this is certainly true for counseling and therapy. I always begin with active listening, but I want to say some stuff as well. Carl Rogers had it, limited when his way, Virginian, but for me, it's about changing cognitions. So I need to listen to the cognitions. I'm going to try to help them change. But I will want my active role as a therapist. But yes, Father Nicholas, and sometimes I can active listen, then want to share and hope I'm active listen too, and it doesn't happen. And that's it's called life. Because every breath, every day, every relationship is organically different and what we just call life.
Maybe we could talk a little bit about, what active listening is not. For people who may be going, hey, I'm pretty good at this, or I think I'm good at this. I think people need to know how to assess whether they're doing this so they know what it's not.
That's a really good question, and I'll answer it directly. But the other video I have that goes about a minute and a half, 2 minutes maybe, with a different seminarian, kind of answers that in a different way. So right now, might we hear or see Jared Huffman?
Please. Thank you.
I'm sitting with Jared Huffman, who is a seminarian here, who took the orientation class on active listening, then went home and tried it a bit, and then had something to tell the other students. So I am asking him now to tell you, the viewer, what he said. So, Jared, would you say what you said?
Yes, of course. So when I initially did the orientation with Dr. Rossi, one of the opportunities we had was to attempt an active listening session in a role-playing scenario. And I volunteered for it specifically because I believed Dr. Rossi when he said that I was likely very bad at active listening. And indeed, that was the case. One of the things that I felt in that scenario was the back and forth of repeating what the person had said would come across as patronizing. So it was really, really difficult for me to do that during the scenario, but I wanted to commit to getting better at it. So I started very deliberately doing active listening with my children, who were 7, 5, and 3. And one of the things that made this particularly useful is they're both used to and tolerant of being patronized. So I wasn't particularly embarrassed about that aspect of it. And I remember that my kids started responding to me very differently than they had before. If they were upset, when I would repeat back to them what they had said to me, it wasn't magic. They didn't all of a sudden not become upset, but they would very visibly be improved. So here's an example. At one point, my daughter, it was a tantrum about something, and one of the kind of like continual disputes that you have over matters that as an adult seem trivial to you. And she had her back turned to me, she was crying, and she was wanting something, and I said, "Oh, Theodora, it sounds like you're saying what you want is," and then more or less repeated it back to her. And she stopped what she was doing, turned her all the way around to face me, and with kind of like her full body went, "Yes!" And seeing that response, I think I had been kind of convinced that this was a good thing to do before. Again, not magic. She was still upset afterward, but had undergone a pretty significant change through that moment that was just like this very visible relief at finally feeling like she had been heard.
Thank you, Jared. That's exactly what I was hoping you would say, because that is what you said to the students before. Thanks a lot.
So, in a sense, Dr. Roxanne, that's a partial answer to your question. Here's a little fuller answer. What is active listening not? And I'll tell you some sentences spoken to me right after my wife died during the funeral time by really good people, friends of mine. They were there for services. And they were from all three seminaries, St. Vladimir, St. Tikhon, and Holy Cross, because I have friends all three. And what I call killer sentences, non-active listening, were said to me. And understand I was broken because my wife had died. I had 2 kids to raise, etc. And I said something, blah, blah, blah. And this person, really good person, said to me, "Where'd you get that idea?" The whole floor dropped out from under me. Where'd you get that idea? Another killer sentence. "I understand what you feel." That's crap. That's crap. You might have some statistics that align. At the time, I don't know how old I was. I'll call it 55. Someone might be 55 and clinical psychologist at a seminary and wrote a couple books, and I say something and the person says, "I understand how you feel." The person has no idea how I feel. We cannot at all fully or even mostly understand another person's deep stuff. I heard a great example on the internet the other day, interviewing a woman married 65 years to her husband who's still alive. And the question was, can you tell us something about your own view of your husband? She said, "I know my husband better than I know the back of my hand, but I'll never understand him." That's the way real human life really is. So to say to somebody, "I understand how you feel," is patronizing. Your question was examples of not active listening. Here's one that was said to me a number of times during the funeral arrangements. Now, I'm there with a 17-year-old and 11-year-old. I have, 3 jobs, Pace University, tenured, office as a clinical psychologist, teaching courses at the seminary. Feeling totally inadequate. This was said to me a lot. "Al, things will get better." That's junk. That's totally inappropriate. And I hope I never say that, and I hope our listeners never say to another human being, "Things are going to get better." Why? I can't predict the future. I'm not God. I can be talking to this person. I can say things are going to get better. That person can get hit by a bus in 2 hours. There's no guarantee anything's going to, quote, get better. So all I can say is, for me, they're killer sentences, the opposite of any active listening. And, I could go on and on, but another one is, just pray. Well, again, that's trite. It's like saying, do good and avoid evil. Okay, but isn't there a little more relationship here? Is there a little more we can bond about, namely my real pain? So useful sentences that are not active listening per se, but at least useful. Say to a person, "You know what? I don't understand how you feel," because it's honest. And the other person knows it. Or another useful sentence could be, "I just want to be here for you." So, topic of this conversation podcast is about active listening being love delivered. In the military today, and in many corporations today, active listening is being taught and, workshops given under a different name. It's called mirroring. Now, we're claiming active listening is love delivered because it has no ulterior motive. In the military and in corporations, there's an ulterior motive. Corporation is trying to sell you something and manipulating you through active listening. Military, same thing, manipulating you into becoming a better soldier. Well, we don't have that kind of underlying thing. So active listening is love delivered, God delivered. We would say it basically is Christ in me, meeting Christ in you. And we're both strengthened by that connection, which God has allowed me to be able to deliver. So real active listening, as you said so nicely, Dr. Roxanne, does offer a strong sense of relatedness, even if momentary. But as Jared said, that makes a difference in terms of the real relationship that we have. We know each other better. It gives competency and autonomy. And to the extent that I can do it, strengthens me as well. I know that apart from the response, I know I did what I could, the grace that was given to me, to be able to deliver love, deliver God.
Yeah, it really is as if you're saying active listening means there is no agenda as you're listening to someone other than making a tremendous amount of room for who they are and what they're feeling and experiencing in its fullness. And there is no agenda to shift or change or direct. I mean, I think, as I'm listening to what people said to you shortly after your wife passed, is there was an agenda to help you feel better. There was an agenda to move you along, to get you out of this space. And I think that's so often the case. We have our own agenda as someone is talking. And it's very rare that, we intentionally step back and just make a tremendous amount of room, no matter what they say, to have no agenda to move them into any other space than the space that they're in.
Yes. I'm reminded of a haiku poem by Basho. Basho is considered the best haiku poet ever. And the most widely read, best noted, even noted by Thomas Merton, is his haiku that says, "Old pond, frog jumps in, plop." That's the experience. There's no before or after. And, Merton puts it very nicely, that exact haiku, because it is so difficult for us children of Vladimir to really grasp and live by. This experience is this experience, and you are you, and you're talking to me, and that's all I want to have happen.
I've loved this. I mean, I think we could do another show on this. It's amazing. We're already at the end of our show, Dr. Rossi, and I find that a show like this is so beneficial on so many levels. Not only is it just a great reminder of how important it is to just be, actively honing in the skill of active listening, because I think that it's one of those things that we have to continuously working on, because as you were mentioning earlier, we're wounded people. All of us are wounded. We all have our own scars. We all have our own hurts. We're all broken. And so naturally, and every time that those opportunities come where we want to have our point across or share our thoughts, we can struggle to actively listen. And you kind of think to yourself, how many arguments or how many conflicts could be resolved perhaps so much sooner if we just practiced active listening? And obviously it's easier said than done. But I love what you shared. And I know that Roxanne and I are always honored to have you on our show and just to kind of share your wisdom, to share your thought. And so thank you, Dr. Rossi, for spending time with us on this Tuesday night.
Always so enlightening.
It really is my joy as well, really, to be with the two of you. I thoroughly enjoy it. And I'm very, very, very grateful for the invitation. So thank you very, very much.
Well, we look forward to having you on again for sure on a subsequent show, perhaps on this topic of active listening when we're in the midst of extraordinary conflict, and where there's, where emotions are very high. But thank you so much again, Dr. Rossi. We wish you and your family a Merry Christmas. Your gentle soul brings so much delight to us. So thanks again for taking the time to be with us. And thanks to all of you listeners and viewers who are tuning in this evening. We thank you so much for being part of our family over the last year. This is the final show that we're having this year. The next couple of weeks we are going to be off, as Ancient Faith is going to be taking a break as well. And so on behalf of our family, we'd like to wish all of you a Merry Christmas. May it be a blessed and holy nativity season for you. And we look forward to having you back with us in the new year as we begin another season of Live with the Louhs. Thanks to Matushka Trudy for producing, as always, our show. She does such an amazing job with that. And God bless you all, everyone, and have a blessed night.
Father Nick and Dr. Roxanne are the authors of their books Renewing You, A Priest, a Psychologist, and a Plan, and 6 Hours, 7 Lessons, How Christ's Light Transcends Our Darkness, which can be purchased at store.ancientfaith.com. Their daily inspirational messages can be found at thelouhs.com/subscribe. Be sure also to search for The Louhs on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Live with the Louhs is a listener-supported presentation of Ancient Faith Radio.